I found him barely breathing, no bigger than a teacup, and everyone said he wouldn't survive the night. But what happened next shocked every single person who saw it. And it's a moment I will never forget. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The afternoon sun was warm, but the breeze carried a bite of early spring. I was walking past a row of old, weathered houses when a faint, almost imperceptible sound reached my ears. At first, I thought it was the wind whistling through a broken fence, but then I heard it again, a tiny, desperate whimper. Curiosity tugged at me. I followed the sound toward a pile of discarded boxes near the corner of an alley. There, hidden beneath a tattered blanket, was a creature so small, I almost didn't notice him at first. A puppy, no bigger than a teacup, lay curled in the shadows, his frail body trembling. His fur was matted, his eyes half closed, and each breath seemed to take every ounce of strength he had left. I crouched down, my heart aching at the sight. When I reached out, he didn't even flinch, just gave a faint sigh, as if surrendering to whatever fate awaited him. At that moment, I knew this wasn't just a chance encounter. I couldn't walk away. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that this tiny, fragile life had only one chance, and it was standing right in front of him. I scooped him up, and everything changed. The moment his tiny body rested in my hands, I could feel the faint flutter of his heartbeat, uneven, fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind. His paws were icy cold, and his breathing came in shallow, strained bursts. I held him closer, trying to share my warmth, afraid that if I loosened my grip, he might slip away. I hurried home, each step quick and careful, whispering soft words. I wasn't sure he could hear. Once inside, I wrapped him in the softest towel I could find and placed him near a small heater, making sure the air wasn't too hot. A shallow dish of warm goat's milk sat ready on the table, and I dipped a finger into it, touching it gently to his mouth. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then, barely, his tiny tongue flicked out, tasting the drop. I repeated the process, drop by drop, until I saw him swallow. It wasn't much, but it was something, a flicker of fight in a body so frail. I stroked his head gently, feeling the slight rise and fall of his chest. I didn't know if it would be enough. All I knew was that I had to keep trying. As the minutes passed, I realized my efforts alone might not be enough. The puppy's breathing was still shallow, his body limp except for the occasional twitch. Every second felt like a race against time, and I knew I couldn't take chances. He needed real medical attention. Now, I wrapped him in a blanket, tucking the edges tightly around his tiny frame, and slipped him gently into a small box lined with a soft cloth. My hands trembled as I grabbed my keys and headed for the car. The drive to the nearest vet felt endless. Every red light felt like a cruel delay. I kept glancing into the box, terrified I'd see his chest stop moving. At one intersection, I leaned over and whispered, "Stay with me, little one. We're almost there." When I finally pushed through the clinic doors, the receptionist's eyes widened at the sight of the bundle in my arms. "He's barely breathing," I said, my voice shaking. She motioned urgently for a vet, who rushed forward and took the puppy from me with practiced care. As they disappeared into the exam room, I stood frozen, my heart pounding. Now, all I could do was wait and hope I wasn't too late. The exam room door swung open, and the vet's expression was somber. He cradled the puppy in one hand, supporting the fragile body as though it were made of glass. "He's in critical condition," he said quietly. "Severely dehydrated, malnourished, and dangerously weak." My stomach sank. I had known he was in bad shape, but hearing it spoken aloud made the reality hit harder. The vet laid the puppy on a heated pad and began running in 4 lines so small, it looked like a thread of silver. "We'll do everything we can," he continued, "but you should prepare yourself. Puppies this small, sometimes they just don't make it." His words were gentle, but they cut deep. I swallowed hard, my eyes locked on the tiny rise and fall of the puppy's chest. Every breath seemed like a fragile victory. The vet glanced at me. "If he survives the next 24 hours, his chances will improve. But until then, it's going to be a fight." I nodded, my voice too tight to speak. Inside, I made a silent promise. No matter what it took, I would not give up on him. He wasn't just fighting for his life, he was counting on me. That night felt longer than any I had ever lived through. The vet had shown me how to feed him with a tiny syringe, one drop at a time, and how to keep his body warm without overheating him. Every movement had to be gentle, precise, his life balanced on the thinnest of threads. I set him in a small box lined with soft towels, a heating pad beneath one corner, so he could move closer or farther from the warmth as he needed. Every few minutes, I would lean over, listening for the faint rhythm of his breathing. At one point, the rise and fall of his chest slowed so much that panic surged through me. I scooped him up, rubbing his tiny sides with my fingers, whispering his name, even though he didn't have one yet. His little body twitched, then let out the faintest sigh. I exhaled, my hands trembling. The hours blurred together, feeding, warming, listening, waiting. The house was silent except for the ticking clock and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. By the time the first light of dawn slipped through the curtains, I was exhausted. But so was he. And the question still lingered. Had we made it through the night? The first rays of sunlight spilled across the room, brushing over the box where he lay. I leaned in, holding my breath, afraid of what I might or might not see. Then it happened. His tiny head shifted, just a fraction, and his eyes fluttered open. It wasn't much, but it was everything. I felt a rush of hope surge through me, stronger than coffee, stronger than sleep. I reached for the syringe, offering a drop of warm milk. This time, instead of hesitating, he latched onto it with surprising strength, swallowing greedily. I laughed through tears, relief washing over me. That's it, little fighter, that's it. As the morning wore on, he managed to lift his head and let out the faintest squeak, his first real sound since I'd found him. It was weak, but it was a voice, and it told me he was still here. I wrapped him in the towel again, holding him close to my chest, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat against mine. Each thump felt stronger, steadier. For the first time since this began, I believed we might actually win this fight. And I silently vowed I would not let that spark fade again. From that morning on, every day felt like a small victory. He began eating a little more with each feeding, his tiny body growing warmer and stronger. The once dull look in his eyes started to change. There was curiosity there now, a spark that hadn't been before. On the third day, he managed to take a wobbly step toward me when I set him down. His legs trembled, but he didn't give up. I found myself cheering him on like a proud parent. That's it. Come on, you can do it. At our next vet visit, the doctor examined him and shook his head in disbelief. Honestly, I didn't think he'd pull through, but he's proving us all wrong. The relief in his voice matched my own. That was the day I gave him a name, Chance, because that's exactly what he'd been given and exactly what he was taking. Over the weeks, Chance's fur grew softer and fuller, his bark became stronger, and his once fragile frame filled out. The frail, silent puppy I had found was gone, replaced by a playful, stubborn little survivor who followed me everywhere. He wasn't just living now, he was thriving. The day I realized Chance was truly healthy was unforgettable. He bounded across the living room, ears flopping, tail wagging furiously, and leapt into my lap with enough force to nearly knock me over. I laughed, holding him close, marveling at how far we'd come from that cold afternoon when I first found him. He was no longer a fragile life hanging by a thread. He was energy, joy, and love wrapped in a small but determined body. Every time I looked at him, I saw the fight he'd put up, the nights of worry, and the moment when hope had finally turned into victory. The vet still called him a miracle case. Friends and neighbors couldn't believe this thriving little dog was the same puppy I'd pulled from under a pile of boxes. Chance became a reminder of something important. No life is too small to matter, and no situation is too hopeless to try. Sometimes, all it takes is someone who refuses to give up. So, if you ever see a creature in need, remember this: even the tiniest life can carry the biggest fight. And like Chance, they just might surprise you.